This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
According to the New York Times, the international proposal offered to Iran by the West regarding its nuclear program contains trade incentives and promises that will help Iran in its civilian nuclear program. The newspaper reported that a number of European and American diplomats said that the offer contains several incentives, which include the following: allowing Iran to join the World Trade Organization and helping it build light water nuclear reactors, allowing Iran to purchase modern airplane parts from the American Boeing and the British Airbus companies, permitting it to obtain American technology in the agriculture sector. According to the New York Times, Israel supported these Iranian incentives. Meanwhile, the White House expressed optimism regarding Iran's reaction on the Western package. According to the White House spokesman Tony Snow, the Iranian government must suspend uranium enrichment activities. Iran said that the package contains some positive aspects, but there are some ambiguities. After receiving the package from Mr. Javier Solana, the European Union Foreign Relations Chief, Mr. Ali Larijani, the Iranian chief nuclear negotiator, confirmed that the package contains ambiguous aspects that need to be clarified. Mr. Solana described his negotiations with Iranians as good.
We had a very good meeting with Larijani and Minister Mutaki. We hope that we will receive a positive answer.
Iran described the superpower proposal regarding its nuclear program as positive but ambiguous. During a visit to Iran, Mr. Javier Solana, the European Union Foreign Relations Chief, delivered the incentive package to Iranian officials after holding talks with them. Mr. Solana and Iranian officials described the talks as constructive. The European incentive package contains details that have not yet been disclosed. Generally speaking, the proposal contains trade, technology, and diplomatic incentives. In return, Iran must halt uranium enrichment activities. The proposal also contains a threatening clause which calls on referring Iran to the Security Council if it rejects the incentive package. Mr. Javier Solana left the incentive package on the bargaining table so Tehran can study it and make a decision. According to some observers, Iran's decision on the package may lead to yet another round of negotiations. The European package calls on Iran to suspend uranium enrichment activities. While Tehran welcomed the package, it insists that it has the right to enrich uranium. The next stage of negotiations may focus on the problem of uranium enrichment by Iran. According to some observers, the incentive package will not resolve the Iranian nuclear problem. However, it shows a shift in the American administration policy in dealing with the Iranian nuclear program. Washington drafted these proposals in order to bring Russia and China closer to its position regarding the controversial Iranian nuclear program. The Bush administration is trying to rally Moscow and Beijing behind it in case the Iranian nuclear file gets transferred to the Security Council. Other observers believe that the incentive package will be the magic key that will open a new chapter in the relationship between Tehran and the West, and it will close the files of the Iranian nuclear program that has been a source of concern in the region and the entire world.
طالما أرق دول المنطقة والعالم أجمع.
Iranian President Ahmedinejad says supporting investment, job creation, and development of public transportation topped the agenda of the government.
In an exclusive interview with IRIB, President Ahmedinejad said demands over investment in Iran are on the rise in all fronts. Iranian president added several countries from across the globe are eager to invest in Iran's economic fields, gas and oil in particular. The chief executive voiced the government's readiness to support domestic and foreign investments. On Iran's foreign policy, President Ahmedinejad said Iran is boosting political ties with other countries through a positive and constructive atmosphere.
Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, arrived in the Yemeni capital Sana'a on Wednesday to take up mutual ties and a number of regional issues with the Yemeni officials. Soon after his arrival, the Iranian chief nuclear negotiator met with Foreign Minister Abu Bakr al-Kurdi when the pair discussed the latest developments in the Middle East as well as Iran's nuclear case. Russia says new U.S. nuclear arsenal is a grave threat to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, in an address to Duma, described as worrisome America's plans to develop nuclear weapons and nuclear carrier continent-crossing ballistic missiles, adding such moves will leave the world with growing instability. He further underlined the use of unconventional arms will undoubtedly undermine the NPT. The European Union foreign policy chief says what Iran received were elements of a proposal which are the basis for later negotiations. Javier Solana said on Wednesday the package enables Iran to have civilian nuclear energy and access to technology, and it offers economic incentives, above all in the energy sector. Meanwhile, in the day, German Chancellor Angela Merkel urged Tehran to consider the offer seriously, which she said was an opportunity to secure a peaceful solution to the long nuclear standoff with the West. Meanwhile, U.S. State Department spokesman Sean McCormack said Iran would have to suspend nuclear enrichment throughout any negotiations as a condition for proposed talks with the Islamic Republic. Almost 600 prisoners were released in Iraq on Wednesday, a day after new Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki said a total of 2,500 would be freed to help foster national reconciliation. It was one of the biggest such releases of prisoners held in Iraqi or American detention since U.S.-led forces invaded the country 3 years ago.
Still in the capital, 13 out of some 50 Iraqi transport workers who were abducted earlier this week were found alive, but some showed signs of torture and had been shot in the foot. 2 police officers were killed and 2 policemen were wounded when a roadside bomb struck their vehicle in Baghdad. Meanwhile, gunmen shot dead 3 university students in Mosul, 390 kilometers north of the capital. Still in Mosul, 3 people, including a policeman, were killed in a drive-by shooting. Elsewhere in Baku, about 65 kilometers north of Baghdad, 2 Iraqi soldiers were killed and 4 were wounded. One of them died when a roadside bomb struck his patrol. Gunmen later opened fire on Iraqi troops coming to evacuate the wounded, killing the 2nd soldier.
في العراق قتل 21 شخصا بينهم 3 من ضباط الشرطة العراقية في هجمات متفرقة في
21 people were killed in Iraq, including 3 police officers in separate attacks in Baghdad. 5 unidentified bodies were found in Baghdad, including 2 women. 14 Iraqis were killed in Basra when unidentified armed assailants opened fire randomly on a few streets throughout the city. Meanwhile, the Iraqi and U.S. forces released about 600 detainees because they lacked evidence to charge them. Today, violence in Iraq has killed members of the Iraqi police. 4 police officers were killed when armed men shot at their patrol unit as it was passing through the Mansour neighborhood in Baghdad. The attack also wounded many police officers who were transferred to the Yarmouk hospital. 2 police officers, a general and a major, were killed and 2 others were injured in the Zayuna neighborhood where their vehicle drove over an IED in eastern Baghdad. 5 Iraqis were killed and 11 others were wounded when a booby-trapped car exploded near a mourning hall southwest of the Iraqi capital.
5 عراقيين قتلوا وجرح 12 آخرون حين انفجرت سيارة مفخخة قرب سرادق عزاء جنوب غربي العاصمة العراقية.
We were sitting and praying. We hadn't finished yet, and then the explosion went off.
أما قرية سادات على بعد 80 كيلومترا من بعقوبة فقد كانت على موعد مع غارات.
In the middle of the night, the U.S. forces carried out a raid at a home in Sadat village, 80 kilometers from Bakuba, killing 2 men from the same family and wounding 4 others. The wife of the dead man said that the U.S. forces surprised the family members while they were sleeping at home. They shot her husband and son, killing them both.
فاردتهما قتيلين.
They took them to the hospital and they died there. Their bodies were riddled with bullets.
Meanwhile, the U.S. forces released about 600 detainees in Baghdad one day after the Iraqi Prime Minister, Nur al-Maliki, announced that they would be releasing 2,500 prisoners to support the National Reconciliation Project.
Today we have good news. After we exerted efforts over many long months by negotiating with the U.S. Army, the U.S. Embassy, and UN organization to release Iraqi detainees imprisoned in American prisons.
This is the largest release of prisoners by the U.S. and Iraqi forces since the start of the American occupation in Iraq in 2003. 28,000 prisoners, most of them Sunnis, remain behind bars. Dozens of freed prisoners gathered at the main bus station, the place where they were taken before they were freed.
I have been in jail for 4 months and 7 days. Today, they released us. I'm thankful to the Islamic Party for their efforts to release this group and the 2,500 others.
Perhaps this step taken by Nouri al-Maliki is aimed at exercising his authority at a time when the ruling Shiite Alliance Party is experiencing internal divisions, which have weakened Maliki's abilities to govern the country.
من آخر، ذكرت مصادر الشرطة أن مسلحين أطلقوا النار على أحد عناصرها في مدينة كربلاء مما أدى إلى استشهاده في الحال. وأضافت أن إحدى
The police said that one of their patrols found the body of an old martyr who was killed in a cowardly manner with signs of gunshots on his body. The United States Army admitted to killing 2 Iraqi women, one of whom was pregnant. Yesterday evening, United States soldiers shot them as they were heading to the maternity hospital in the city of Samarra, north of Baghdad. The United States Army gave details of the incident, saying that on Tuesday evening, the car entered a closed security zone and did not comply with the repeated signs and warnings by forces manning checkpoints. Soldiers then fired warning shots to make them stop. The statement said that the car stopped and quickly changed direction to leave the area, and that they later received a report from the Samarra police that indicated that 2 women died at Samarra Hospital from gunshots wounds and that one of the women was pregnant. The United States statement concluded by saying that an investigation has been opened to look into the facts of the incident.
وأن إحدى السيدتين قد تكون حاملا. واختتمت قوات التحالف بيانها بالقول إن تحقيقا فتح بالحادث لبيان الظروف الحقيقية المحيطة به.
May God punish them. May God withhold His grace from them, God willing. Oh God, look at us how we're living. Oh God.
As soon as the car turned around, he shot at it. One lady was shot in the back and died, and the other lady was shot in the head and it exploded. They shot at the car and burned it. May God burn America, God willing. May God's wrath fall on the occupation. May God send an earthquake to America. May God punish them and those who brought them here, God willing. I plead with God, the Almighty, and with all the Muslims.
In other news today, documents just released by the National Archives in Washington reveal that the CIA kept quiet about the whereabouts of Adolf Eichmann. IBA's Elie Wohlgelenter tells us why.
The Second World War. The 27,000 pages of archives released yesterday offer further information about the United States intelligence agencies using former Nazi war criminals as spies. The documents show that West German intelligence officials wrote in a March 19, 1958 memo to the CIA that Eichmann, quote, is reported to have lived in Argentina under the alias Clemens since 1952. The CIA ignored the West German memo, as did the West German government itself, of fear that Eichmann might reveal information about Hans Globke, a former senior Nazi who was one of the authors of the Nuremberg laws in the 1930s. Globke was a close associate of then-Chancellor Konrad Adenauer and the main contact person with American intelligence, coordinating undercover anti-communist activities in Germany during the Cold War.
The newly released CIA materials suggest that at the highest levels of the Konrad Adenauer government, there was concern about what Eichmann could say if caught about those close to the Chancellor. In particular, the Bonn government feared what Eichmann might say about Adenauer's national security advisor, Hans Globke. Before and during World War II, Globke had served in the Jewish Affairs Department at the Ministry of the Interior and had a hand in writing the Nuremberg laws that were designed to remove Jews from all aspects of German life.
2 years after the German memo, when Eichmann was captured and brought to Israel for trial, the CIA pressured Life magazine to delete any references to Globke. This incident is one of several examples of compromises and deals that the CIA made with Nazis after the war in the interest of competing with the Soviet Union for influence in Europe. But this new information about Eichmann himself, the architect of the so-called final solution, is a black stain on American history.
These documents reveal more information about the U.S. government's willingness to work with Nazi war criminals after World War II. As we will see through the statements of our historians, to help Nazi murderers, a U.S. agency misled another U.S. agency, influenced our press not to report a significant item, and failed to lift a finger to help the capture of Adolf Eichmann, the main organizer of the final solution, among other things.
The German memo to the CIA was slightly incorrect. Eichmann was actually using the alias Clement, not Clemens, but that information was more than Israeli agents had gathered in their search for Eichmann. Indeed, Israeli intelligence officers knew that Eichmann lived in Argentina by 1957, but were forced to suspend their search for a while because it was difficult to locate him without a name. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
Mothers and wives of British soldiers in Iraq launched a women's anti-war campaign in London. The women called on British Prime Minister Tony Blair to withdraw British forces from Iraq. Meanwhile, the number of British Army recruits has declined significantly due to growing anti-war sentiment among British citizens, especially since many British have questioned its legality.
The past few weeks were described as the bloodiest ones against British troops in Iraq. In an unprecedented move, mothers and wives of British soldiers in Iraq launched a women's anti-war campaign in London. The women send a message to the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair.
Please, Mr. Blair, listen. There shouldn't be any war.
The women called on the British Prime Minister Tony Blair to withdraw British troops immediately from Iraq. Their slogan is, "Enough war based on lies," and "Our sons are fighting an illegitimate and unethical war."
There are people like me who are afraid for us.
There are people like me who fear for the safety of their children. My son left the army because he did not believe in the war on Iraq. I feel for those mothers whose sons died in an unjustified war and for no reason.
Died for no reason.
Amidst a state of concern for their son's safety, the women voiced their disapproval of the war in Iraq. The women have used their influence and prevented their sons from joining the army because they do not want them to fight an illegitimate war, especially in light of the rise of armed attacks in the streets of Basra and Baghdad. Such increase in violence has damaged the army's credibility.
There is a large decline in the number of recruits joining the British Army. There are also many soldiers who did not rejoin, and many others who resigned or left the service. I believe the soldiers' mothers have something to do with that. Those mothers are worried about the safety of their children, especially since the war is unethical and illegitimate.
Soldiers who are very concerned about a war.
According to an official census conducted by St. Harris, one of the largest army recruiting centers in Britain, the number of army recruits recruits declined significantly. The percentage of decline was estimated at 300% last year alone. This means that there are nearly 2,000 jobs available in the British Army. These women are sounding the alarm bells in London, hoping that the British Prime Minister and military leaders will hear them. They are planning a protest which will coincide with the upcoming annual conference for the ruling Labour Party set for September 2006. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine staged a demonstration in the Gaza Strip. Organizers called on the Palestinian Presidential Office and the Hamas-led government to continue the national dialogue in order to overcome the current impasse in the Palestinian territories.
The Palestinian president and the Hamas-led government have reached a deadlock on the so-called prisoners' document. The Palestinian president wanted the government to end the national dialogue and approve the prisoners' document or face a referendum on this issue. However, Hamas wanted to continue the national dialogue and thus rejected the referendum. In light of this recent showdown between Abbas and the Hamas-led government, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine staged a demonstration in the city of Gaza. Demonstrators headed to the Palestinian National Council in Gaza to send a message to both the office of the president and the Hamas-led government.
We gathered today to send a clear message to Palestinian officials. Palestinians must continue the national dialogue until an agreement is reached because it is the only way out of the current situation. Moreover, it is the only way to face outside challenges, including the international siege and land seizures by Israel.
Meanwhile, a funeral procession was held for Mr. Majdi Taysir Hamad and Ahmad Asalia, two leaders from the Salah ad-Din brigades. The martyrs were killed in a Zionist airstrike north of Gaza. Many Palestinians believe that this ongoing Israeli aggression is aimed at stirring more internal division and problems among Palestinians, so they would be too busy to resist the occupation.
Our children are martyrs, and they were called upon by God. Our children are bridegrooms in heaven. My older son was martyred. This woman's son was also martyred. We are all mothers of martyrs. The mother of Hassan Asfour also had a son who was recently martyred. Thank God. God give us patience.
The cowardly assassination that took place yesterday is part of an ongoing Israeli campaign, which is aimed at liquidating leaders of the Palestinian resistance and stirring chaos in the Palestinian territories. Until the occupation ends, our battle will always be with the Israeli occupation. We will not fight one another.
كتائب شهداء الأقصى وكتائب الشهيد سامي الغول أعلنتا The Al-Aqsa Martyrs and the Sami al-Ghul brigades claimed responsibility for a recent attack on an Israeli military convoy north of the Gaza Strip. Moreover, the Salah ad-Din and the Jerusalem brigades claimed responsibility for a rocket attack at the settlement of Sidrut in occupied Palestine. The Zionist occupation continues to carry out attacks against the Palestinian people in order to stir chaos and disorder in the Palestinian territories. Meanwhile, the Palestinian people are determined that their fight will be only directed against the Israeli occupation.
The countdown is on, with only 2 more days to go before the World Cup kicks off. An opera classical concerts starring the world-famous superstar tenor Placido Domingo launched the 2006 FIFA World Cup festivities in Munich on Tuesday. The game is also taking a political turn, with a leading U.S. Jewish group has written to German Chancellor Angela Merkel, urging her to take a tough stance against any plans by football-mad Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmedinejad to attend the World Cup. The head of the Los Angeles-based Simon Wiesenthal Center wrote to Germany's leader yesterday after Iranian officials were quoted by media as saying their president would attend the football fiesta in Germany if Iran's team advances to the second stage. He said the Iranian leader's possible presence at the global gathering would give him a similar public platform to that of Hitler assumed when he hosted the Berlin Olympics of 1936. FIFA President Sepp Blatter distanced world football's governing body from the brewing row surrounding the possible attendance of the hardline Iranian leader, insisting it was not a footballing matter.
Today's topic is the environment. Several small towns and villages south of Algeria defied hard living conditions imposed by natural factors. Local residents have been showing a great deal of resiliency, which may explain why many of these villages have not disappeared over time. Qasr al-Zaghamra, in the municipality of Bini Abbas, in the Algerian state of Bishar, was no exception. Mustafa Bentina reports.
Over the years and on many occasions, desert sand in the municipality of Bini Abbas in the Algerian state of Bishar formed dunes and moved toward the town of Qasr al-Zaghamra. Amidst a state of hope and hardship, local residents showed a great deal of resiliency in dealing with this natural phenomenon. They refused to abandon their homes and land in light of this frequent problem.
Once a sand dune is formed, it hits the area of Qasr al-Zaghamra. This happened for the 4th time this year. We built walls to shield camels, sheep, crops, and palm trees from these sand dunes.
I've been living in the area of Qasr al-Zaghamra for 44 or 45 years.
Sand dunes covered all the houses in Qasr al-Zaghamra. Some houses were buried in sand, making the roofs of the houses look as though they were on the same level as the surface of the sand. Local residents finally left their old town and relocated to the new Qasr al-Zaghamra. The new town witnessed some social and economic development due to government efforts aimed at improving arid and desert areas.
We relocated to this new town due to problems with sand dunes.
You did not leave the area of Qasr al-Zaghamra.
No, we will not leave this area. We will live here for good. This is our homeland, and it is dear to us.
Local residents in this arid town of Qasr al-Zaghamra continue to go on with their lives. They try to make a better life for themselves. They plow their arid land and grow vegetation and crops.
These trees in this farm need to be watered every 6 days, otherwise they will die out. I asked for government help to provide us with water services.
الى السلطات تاع البلاد نتاعنا والحكومه خاصه.
I call on the Algerian authority and the government to provide us with ways to protect our town from sand dunes. We will not be forced out of our town. We will stay here until Judgment Day.
باقون وباقون وسنبقى في هذه القريه حتى يرث الله الارض ومن عليها.
Living with nature is an old Algerian saying which also applies to present times. Human beings learn from nature, animals, plants and birds. Countries and civilizations are built through cooperation, especially since desert problems are national ones and they concern us all.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.